A challenging 2024 in the rearview mirror, MTN has reported a strong recovery in the first half of 2025, and the growth comes off the back of significant increases in the company's operations in Nigeria and Ghana. And I found this number to be incredibly significant. MTN now as a group has 297.7 million subscribers. That's an incredible number, edging there towards 300 million people subscribing to the network. Let's speak now to Molefe, who's the Group CFO at MTN. Very good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight on Power Business.
Good evening, and thank you very much, and good evening to the listeners as well.
So MTN's recorded a very impressive set of results coming from the loss in 2024. What drove this?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we've seen very strong commercial execution across our markets, disciplined capital allocation, but also improved macro, economic conditions from stable FX, mainly in Nigeria. We've seen currency appreciation in Ghana, which boosted the results as well, but also importantly, easing inflation trends overall. But I must say the performance was largely broad-based across all of our markets. And also bear in mind that Nigeria was also afforded tariff increases in the first half of this year. So we've seen some, very strong growth coming through from voice and data as well, in addition to that.
So in 2024, MTN had to contend with issues around the Naira in Nigeria, and now those have mostly dissipated, and it's a strong growth market.
That is correct. I mean, as you recall, we reported a loss. The Naira had depreciated last year quite significantly, and this had an impact on our numbers. But year on year, we've actually seen stability in the FX in Nigeria, and really long may it last.
The South African numbers, though, saw a downturn, and what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, so I mean, South Africa is really faced with some competitive pressure as an industry, quite a mature market, but also the macro environment in South Africa has been somewhat quite muted, and obviously, the consumers is also feeling the pressure. But also from an MTN SA specific, we have seen some pressure coming through from our prepaid segment. We're pretty stable on the enterprise segment, and largely, wholesale, holding its own, as well as postpaid seeing some improvement. But, a lot of work needs to be done in terms of our prepaid segment specifically.
There was also some cost management that contributed to the positive results. What were those?
Yeah, so I mean, we've continued with our expense efficiency program. Largely, we've said that we're going to be, over the medium term, looking at renegotiation of tower contracts. We successfully completed that last year, and we yielding the results of the renegotiation with towers last year. So the bulk of the saving that we achieved this year came from there. We're also looking at, commission structures, overall vendor, contract negotiations across the board, looking at automation in our customer environment, but also in, our head office costs. So overall, very, relentless in terms of our expense efficiency. We've got quite a huge target. So far, we've achieved 5.3 billion rand in savings since 2024. And we gave ourselves a target of 7 to 8 billion rand till 2026.
Okay, so significant cost savings. There's also the matter of increased competition on the continent, maybe not so much at home, but Starlink operating in several of the markets that MTN operates in, and Safaricom is also trying to expand quite aggressively.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always have to look at what, the competitive pressures are coming from across our markets. Of course, we have to respond. Most of them, competitively, disrupt in terms of pricing. Where it makes sense, we would also try and, follow from a pricing perspective, but only if it makes sense, because it's important for us that we recover the cost of production. But in some instances, we do look at, partnership models. I mean, you mentioned Starlink. We are looking at some partnership modeling as far as LEO satellite is concerned in markets like, Eswatini, Zambia, and we'll continue with those engagements going forward.
Okay, and that's to provide people in more remote areas with access to digital tools?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, then let's talk about digital, exactly that, digital services. So part of MTN's strategy is to expand their digital offering beyond traditional telco. There's a lot of fintechs across the continent, here at home in South Africa as well. How will you differentiate yourself, or what is MTN offering?
Yeah, I mean, we already, and as you have seen in our, release, we talk about streamlining our business into three principal platforms of connectivity, fintech, as well as digital infrastructure. And we believe that this will best position us to capture value from a structural growth opportunity perspective, particularly brought about by data adoption and financial inclusion across the African markets. So from a fintech perspective, we believe that we have set a very solid foundation, and we're really transforming that business to scale it into what we call a digital first platform. Secondly, we're looking at digital infrastructure overall to better enable the exponential growth in our digital workloads, but also infusing AI across the business for value creation. So it is, an area that we focus on going forward as, we move away from a traditional telco to a telco business.
And talking about AI and digital, there's been some significant changes of the leadership team. Just talk to us a little bit about that. The MTN CEO, Charles Molefe, going to IT now and going to be heading up, it looks like, a very interesting period of IT for MTN.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we, the group CEO says as it goes across, the leading conferences with some of the hyperscalers and, entities that lead, he believes that we are really behind. And it's one thing that is really keeping us awake at night. So certainly from an AI, across the business perspective, it is an area that we have, discussed with the board that, we need to look at, use cases and infuse across the board. So we think that, Charles, with his expertise, from a CTIO perspective, which is where he was previously, is where he will obviously be able to add value for the business. Of course, Mazen, who was running that business specifically, still looks after the digital infrastructure. He had a combined role of GCTIO and digital infrastructure. And we felt that it was important that we decouple the two so that there can be a very clear focus around, expanding, on the digital infrastructure side, firstly, fiber and data center business, while Charles would be looking after, IT and technology, but in the main, really focusing on data adoption, including AI.
Right. And now the new MTN South Africa CEO is Ferdy Mulman, who did very well for MTN in Nigeria between 2016 and 2021.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And so just a little bit more about the strategy that he'll have or the kind of work that he's going to be doing?
Yeah, so I think Charles did lay the foundation of what needs to be done, but of course there's a heavy lifting that is required if we look at, where we are relative to competition. As I indicated earlier on, we need to obviously fix the prepaid segment, and, Ferdy will be assisted by the Deputy CEO, Yolanda Kubade. We felt that it was important that, the two of them collaborate because there's a lot of commercial execution that is required. But at the same time, look at, strategies of the future from an MTN South Africa perspective. How do we make sure that the balance sheet is strong, improve on liquidity and cash flow? So that's really, what we are thinking about from MTN SA perspective.
All right, thanks very much. That's Tsholofelo Molefe, the CFO at MTN, taking us through their results. Very interesting to see the absolute growth of Nigeria and Ghanaian units, and then some subdued performance from the South African unit, and new leadership in place that they're hoping will lead a turnaround, particularly in the prepaid segment.